Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode driven by our friends over at Ridge Rock Hunt Company. We'll talk about them at the end. But I am Sam with Fall Obsession, your podcast host, and back on here again with our Fall Obsession Vice President, Drew Tordick. Welcome back, Drew.
Thanks, Sam. It's always good to be here.
Yeah, man. Glad to get back on here, knock out another podcast. Kind of what we have in store for today is a topic that I know we touch here and there over the course of the past 90 plus episodes that we've had on here. We've had some episodes that are more specifically centered around, filming or that kind of thing here and there, especially toward the beginning of our podcast, I felt like. But one thing that we wanted to jump on here and talk about today was the whole concept, the topic of content creation, basically. It's a very broad subject. A lot can be included, and we can unpack potentially a lot with it today if we really wanted to. But it's something that kind of has its own unique twist, I feel like, in the outdoor industry. And with us being a media production company, with us primarily focusing, our business model, a lot revolves around the content creation aspect. I think it's something that's a lot of people on a podcast don't really dive into, and we're going to take a stab at it. So to kind of kick things off, I know that you just had a little bit of a time with some folks up there in Minnesota at, Sandpine Pheasants, I think. Is that where you went?
Yeah, that's correct. I was out there. It was a group of 30 guys. They were doing a European pheasant hunt. So there's 10 stations that they shoot from, and I think they had 330 pheasants they were shooting, and it was a pretty good time by everyone. I know this time I think they shot a little over 2,500 shells,
Wow.
But I've seen those numbers as high as 6,000 in a day. So it's a good time.
So I'm going to start off our podcast by jumping off topic real quick.
Yep.
I am from Texas. I don't know anything about a European pheasant hunt. You're talking about them shooting from stations. Can you, just because now I'm all of a sudden curious, can you describe this experience a little bit for me in more detail?
Yeah, no, it's something that it was new to me too the first time I saw it. It's actually a really fun time. It's an old hunting tradition. It is an old hunting tradition back from like the King's times, where they would get a royal party together and go out hunting, and rather than having to walk through the fields, they would essentially line up around a field and the birds would be flushed out to them. So I guess the modern equivalent of that is, to be safe, it's a giant circle where nobody's shooting each other. You're shooting over the heads of the other person safely, and there's a lot of trees in between to block the shots, and nobody's shooting low. So it's all done in a safe manner, but you're essentially around a release point where the birds are being released and flushed out to you, and you stand at these safe stations and shoot the birds as they fly overhead.
Huh. It completely new concept. I learned something today. I never heard of that before. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So you went out there with the content creation mindset. From my understanding, you weren't going out there as a hunter. So going into, now that we know a little bit more about what the hunt consists of, how does that translate to you as far as what you're trying to capture, and what in your mind is significant enough about that experience to document it?
Yeah. So I guess from my point of view, when I'm out there trying to create content, I'm looking for what portions or what individual aspects of the hunt does it take to convey the full story, right? What if you saw these pieces individually, would tell you at the end of the day, this is what happened in the field that day. This is the general hunt that those guys were on. So for that general situation, what I have is, birds flying real high, getting shot at. Got guys at those safe shooting stations taking shots, some of it in slow motion. I've got the dogs making the retrieves. Some slow motion retrieves always look pretty cool on film. And then sort of that capture at the end of what does it look like when all the shooting's done, gathering up the birds, hanging them up for display, the picture taken, the group camaraderie, the event back at the clubhouse where everyone's fed dinner and they sit around and, talk about the day's hunt. So how do you capture all of those pieces in each individual aspect to really help you tell that full story? Telling
the story is a term that I use a lot, and I love it personally. It frames it up perfectly. Because that's exactly what you're trying to do, and there's different ways to do it depending on the project that you're working on. It requires a lot of forethought. It requires a lot of work. I mean, for lack of a better term, because you're pretty much out there constantly trying to capture everything, just so that you have more pieces than you're going to need in the end, is what it translates to. And then we can talk maybe a little bit more here in a minute about just bits and pieces of the editing room and how it translates to that. But you're framing everything up, you're telling a story. Different ways to do that. One is just through the actual footage, which, like, you're documenting experience from start to finish. Other times you can actually start pulling specific people maybe to share their part of that story, to share their experience. And I know one film that we've put out that I was going to mention is the first installment of what we're trying to kick off as our My Obsession series, with our veteran hunt giveaway winner Mark Zorich from this past December on the whitetail hunt here. That video is on our YouTube channel, so you guys can go see it now. But we just started filming for as soon as we got out there. I was the cameraman on that one, so we're videoing the whole time. We're videoing everything, and then toward the end of the trip, we actually start pulling Mark and actually doing more of an interview style of production with him, where he can actually share his side. And then when we get to the editing room, that translates over. You're mixing and matching, you're combining that stuff together to, again, complete that story in whole, because as he describes things, you now have the footage to back it up. So a lot of different ways to do that, but telling the story is the best way to say that, because it's one thing to film just a hunt, like a deer hunt. You walk to the stand, you get in the stand, you film the hunt, you film the shot, you film the recovery, you're done. But when you're filming an experience, there's so much more that you have to get. And that's something too. We can talk about A-roll versus B-roll footage with that too. Because I am a big believer in B-roll footage helping tell that story. And from a creator standpoint, and I'm gonna get a little bit into the method behind the madness with some of this too, but from a creator standpoint, you want to be engaging. You want your content to pop, to be appealing, and to keep people engaged. And when you show the same shot for too long, or even if somebody is verbally talking about a really interesting experience, just a video of them sitting there talking about that without having the B-roll footage to back it up and show what they're referencing, you lose people that way. And so that's the line you have to walk, is trying to find that balance to where you can tell the story, you cannot leave out any information, but you're at the same time you're not boring people, if you will. You're keeping them engaged. So and B-roll footage it helps a lot tell that story, but at the same time it can be very challenging to get enough. And I know a majority of the B-roll footage that I capture is kind of it's kind of spur of the moment. You know, it's not something that you plan, it's something that you see, and as the creator, you grab it right then and there.
Yeah, I know one thing just from personal experience is keep that camera rolling, right? I guess at the end of the day, you never know what the narrative of the story is going to be. And there are times, you know, filming in cold conditions, filming in rain, where you put the camera away and it always seems like that's the moment that something interesting happens. It may have nothing to do with the hunt, but it is something that you look back on it and you're like, man, I really wish I would have captured that 30 seconds of that conversation that we just had or whatever it is. And so I found that, you know, back to telling the story, the easiest way to do that is to record everything, let the story tell itself, and, you know, really kind of define the story at the end of the day, or even potentially as far into it as the editing room.
Yeah.
You know, there's times where I've come out of a hunt not knowing what it's going to look like once we edit it together, and I'm real happy with the work that Nick does in the editing room, and sometimes I'm really surprised with what he's able to do with what we give him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we like you said, you come out of that not knowing what you're gonna have, and I know, like, for me with that hunt with Mark, it was a little intimidating because, one, we're event hosts on this thing, and I'm not saying anything that I haven't said to Mark on this podcast already, but we were event hosts on this thing, so obviously I want things to go smoothly. I want it to be a good experience for Mark, and thankfully it was. At the same time, trying to produce content for this at the same time, I didn't know. I was videoing everything. I have hours of footage I'm probably never going to use, but filming everything, and then you're spot on when you say that you have to keep the camera rolling, because I remember, like, we'd come back to camp, it was kind of the end of the day, everybody's winding down, we put the stuff down, the gear down, we go in the kitchen, we cook just a pretty simple meat and taters kind of dinner, but then we'd sit down and eat dinner and just start talking, and at some point during the conversation I just have this realization, like, oh my gosh, I need this. This is the moment that I need captured right here. And I'm freaking stuffing my face and my camera's on the other side of the room. So nobody's perfect. Nobody captures everything, but I mean, you're spot on. You have to keep it rolling to get the absolute most out of everything that a project has to offer.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, hunting videos all sort of have the same subject matter, right? It's going out in the field and shooting an animal. And it's all of the other nuances and all of the other challenges and all of the other in between, right? It's the white space in between that makes an interesting story, especially with hunting content.
Yeah, and that's where, that specifically is where we or anybody, I'm using us as the obvious example, but it's where people set themselves apart, is in those unique things. Because you're right, hunting content is pretty standard across the board. You have to find your niche. You have to find your look, if you will. And I mean, you can go on YouTube and all. I mean, I won't plug any names, but if you're big into the online hunting content world, just as a viewer, as a subscriber, you know all the big name channels. You know these guys that are doing good stuff with their videos and everything, and it's because they have a unique look. One, they might have a unique subject matter, like hunting in the suburbs of Atlanta, or, you know, whatever it might be, but at the same time, the way that they present their content is in a very unique way specific to them, and that's what content creators have to come up with, is that unique way. And then being able to, one, continue presenting stuff in your fashion, but also evolve it and mature it. Because the more that you do this, the better you will get. I mean, I feel like our brand is a good example of it. I'm not by any means claiming to be huge experts on the matter. We're blue collar outdoorsmen. But at the same time, you go back and look at our videos from 3-4 years ago, and then look at what we're putting out today. there's a difference. It's still a Fall Obsession production, but you can see that maturity, you can see that evolution and how things have changed over time. That being said, keep your look, keep your vision, but don't be afraid to mature as your own experience does, because it's only going to help you, your content, your followers. And it can be intimidating. I know it's been intimidating for me in the past, to whether it's a new camera, new editing software, a new filming technique, or somebody telling me, hey, that footage really wasn't that great, try this next time, and it hurts your pride a little bit. But it's what you need to hear, and you're better for it in the long run. So getting in a little specifically too on the editing side of everything, I don't want to give away, like I said, I'm not here to give away secrets necessarily by any means, but from the editing side of a content creator, the filming, the production is only half of it, and where everything comes to life is obviously in that stage between filming and hitting whatever screen you're putting it on, and editing room being that. So you talk about telling that story and everything, and you have to, and your style, your method to your own madness and everything, all that comes together in the editing room. And one thing that I think really helps from the creation standpoint, from the producer standpoint, is one, knowing your editor, whether it's you or whether it's somebody else, knowing their capabilities and knowing how they are going to see this content and how they are going to be able to produce it. I imagine the most of the guys that are listening to this podcast to try and get some pointers on content creation are probably their own editors, more than likely, or they could even be one of our own guys, in which case Nick Powell's your editor. But that being said, guys editing their own content, that is the best possible scenario, in my opinion, because from the very start, from the time you hit the field, you already have in your mind what you want it to look like. And so when you start filming and everything, you can already be envisioning that. You can already be thinking about the shots that you want, the footage that you need, the information, the storytelling aspect of it that you need to make sure you include. And then when you get to the editing room, it's all the more easy. I think if you're using another person as your editor and you have a certain vision like that for your project, you definitely have to communicate that with them. You have to have the time to sit down with them and everything. I know here at Fall Obsession, Nick is our media production guy. He's the guy that does a majority of our film edits and stuff. And not to say that you or I, Drew, don't have the capabilities to do that. That's just how our responsibilities here at the company have unfolded. I know for me, one of the scariest things that I've done since being a part of Fall Obsession was bringing Nick into that role. And I've told him this, and he's probably chuckling at himself listening to me talk about it. But, because up until Nick taking on that role, I did the majority of the editing. I did a lot of the filming, so I had that vision on how I wanted the project to look. And bringing Nick into that role was like, okay, now I'm completely letting go of, and not, I don't want to say control because I don't want to sound like a control freak, but letting go of the own control that I have over the project and letting somebody else do it. And Nick and I met, we worked together. I taught him some stuff and trained me, and even since then he's come back and taught me stuff and trained me on stuff that I didn't even know how to do. But basically finding common ground in how we want our productions to go, and that was the goal, so that yes, it's primarily his responsibility, but whether somebody sends footage and I edit or he edits it, it's gonna be for the most part the same result. And when you're doing it for a brand, for your own hunting page, whatever a listener might be thinking about, if you got more than one guy in your editing room, I think that's important, is to have that consistency across the board. So I don't know, you got any thoughts on being the guy behind the computer?
Yeah, I guess, you had mentioned a little bit of reservations when we brought Nick on. I'd be lying if I wasn't right in the same boat with you. And I think that comes back to that brand identity that you were talking about. really having one person in that editing booth controlling the final image of your brand is really important to the final look. And it's that old thing, too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the sauce, and what we had going was good. I'm really happy with the results that we're seeing with Nick now. But it was, like you're saying, it was an opportunity for us to expand, but it also took a lot of trust on our part to bring somebody else new into that and hope that content came out the way that we'd hoped.
Yeah. So you guys, as listeners to this episode, are getting a little inside info on Fall Obsession with where this conversation went there, and hearing a little bit about the evolution from a couple years ago of putting Nick in that role. And what's funny is Nick's probably the one editing this podcast right now, so he's probably listening to us talk about him without his own right to defend himself, but we'll give him that opportunity in a future podcast, I'm sure. But one thing I will touch on, again, not trying to give away any secrets or anything, but while we're on the subject of the editing room, guys, I mean, some people, there's plenty of classes out there that guys can take for whether it's just software specific with the program, whatever it might be that you're using. And if you guys are wondering, we at Fall Obsession use Adobe products, pretty happy with them. And again, it provides that consistency for guys who are all on different devices, with the capability to edit projects. So that's what we use, at least. But what I'm getting at is there's plenty of resources out there for you guys to learn if you're trying to learn more about your software, more about editing techniques. Maybe you're comfortable with it, but you just know that there's more to it, and you just want to learn more. Again, there's info on that, whether you're looking up YouTube videos, actually taking a class. I know there's some companies out there that even do classes specific to outdoor filmography, and they're out there and available for you guys. You can look them up. But what I'm getting at is you learn by trial and error. None of us here at Fall Obsession have taken a film or an editing class, to my knowledge. I know I haven't. Everything that we've learned, everything that you see on our pages is self-taught. It's over years of trial and error. And that's one of the best ways to learn, is just learning what you can do and what you're capable of over time with your own productions. I know I cringe sometimes when I go really far back and look at some of our videos, I mean, we've come a long way, like I said earlier, but I will say just a couple of quick pointers for the editing room. If you guys really, if you're looking for pointers in this episode, I'll give you a couple. Transitions are huge. The transitions and how it correlates with the music and the story that you're telling, it can make or break your video. And there are times for a transition that has movement in it from one frame to another, and sometimes the music can help with the transition and you don't even have to put anything in there. You can just put two clips together and it switches from one to the other. Again, I think the music and the story you're trying to tell dictates whether you use one or not. The best way to find your own style and see how those transitions are applicable is go on YouTube and start watching hunting videos from numerous different channels. You will pick up on stuff that these guys do over here and those guys do over there, and you will over time be able to bring them together and put your own style together. Again, Nick's not on this podcast to contribute or defend himself, but I send him stuff pretty regularly from other hunting pages. I'll see a video, I'll send him something and be like, hey, check out what they did at this point in the video with that edit, or check out their intro right here. This is pretty sweet. And they're able, and we kind of talk about it and everything, and sometimes something similar eventually makes its way to one of our productions, and sometimes it doesn't. So just watching other people's stuff, it goes a long way, and it helps you develop that own style and find things that you like, or you might see something that they did on their edit and it inspires you to go learn how to do it yourself and furthering your knowledge, your own capabilities. So couple brief pointers, but Drew, go ahead.
I was just going to add, don't let your equipment or your experience hold you back. Get in there, try it. If you're not happy with the results, redo it. If you're happy with the results, awesome. Try harder next time and see if you can make something even better than what you just created.
And on that note too, don't be intimidated if you don't have a nice big video camera or something like that to create content, because we are in an age where smartphones are better than they ever have been. And I will admit it, but an iPhone Pro Max, whatever this thing is, that I've created some fall obsession content with that thing. I mean, even videos that you see on our pages, some of the footage comes from an iPhone. Mark, our veteran hunt giveaway winner, he can tell you how many times I was filming with a video camera versus filming with an iPhone out there with him. And I'll let you guys watch the video and try to pick it apart and see if you can tell the difference. But smartphones, man, have come such a long way that, I mean, almost everybody has a high quality video camera in their pocket every day of the week. So you're not limited with by not having a big camera.
And those slow-mo shots, I mean, being able to do that on your phone and not have to adjust settings and not have to change a bunch of things and go back and do it post-production in the editing room is huge. So that's been a feature that I definitely use my phone for, is that slow-mo camera.
Absolutely, for sure. What else do you want to hit on, man?
So I guess one thing that I think I'd offer up as a piece of advice is that one of the most important things for me in a video, on a hunting video, is good audio. You know, the number of bad videos that I've seen where somebody comes in and you can barely hear the audio from the person talking, and then all of a sudden there's a really loud music track that comes in and kind of throws everything even more off balance. And I guess it's one of those things that somebody just starting off, that'd be one of the tips that I'd give them, is really focus on your audio output, your audio production on your end product. It's gonna keep people engaged, but more than keeping people engaged, it's gonna prevent people from becoming unengaged, which is when you lose them real quick.
Yeah, we talked earlier about keeping them engaged and you know, breaking things up, that B-roll footage and everything, but audio plays a huge part. Drew is spot on with that. And you know, it can be hard sometimes to balance it out, or you might be listening to it and somebody else might have a completely different take on it. Biggest advice on the best way to do that is, one, don't let your music, if you're putting music in a separate track on your video, as Drew already alluded to, don't let that overpower the story that you're telling. It's an additive to that story. It's helping you tell that story. It is not taking over. It shouldn't, and you shouldn't feel like that. Some pointers on just audio in general and making sure that those levels and everything are right. Some guys edit with headphones. Some guys edit without them. Listen to it with both. You know, if you edit with headphones, before you wrap up that video, listen to it without. You know, in a reasonably quiet environment. That way you can maybe hear what it's going to sound more like if somebody's watching it on their computer or on their phone or something like that without headphones. If you edit without headphones, check your production with them before you wrap it up, because you will pick up on stuff. You might hear stuff that you did not hear in the video before. So check it with that, and when in doubt, have somebody else watch it. Have somebody else look at it and see if they pick up on anything. I know with some of the edits that I've done before we publish, I send them over to Nick and like, hey man, watch this, see what you think. And he does the same with me. He sends them over, hey, tell me what you think, and we critique each other. We say, hey, this is good, I really like this, or we might need to change this. We start bouncing ideas off of each other. We take it back to the editing room and fix it up. Not because we think that we know better than the other guy, but it's a different perspective. It's somebody else that is looking at it that can, again, critique it. And then not only that, but we're making ourselves better, because maybe I see something that he doesn't. I know how to fix it, or vice versa. And then he learns something from me, I learn something from him. All that comes together and helps us for future productions. So absolutely make sure that your audio is is squared away, and listen to it in a couple different fashions before you put it on your pages. So, and to talk a little bit before we get into any kind of conclusion, I know we mentioned B-roll footage and talked a little bit about it to start. I don't know. I want to emphasize that capturing things that you might not think about, or even the stuff that you don't think will go well in a production, that kind of stuff can sometimes, end up being really beneficial to you. And I'll give you one instance specifically as far as B-roll goes, to kind of bring that home. It was on this veteran hunt that I was on. Mark and I were walking back from the stand the first evening, and the moon was shining. It was just starting to get dark and everything, which of course with a camera, and keep this in mind too, guys, another tip is, light that you see with your eyes is going to be less light with the camera when you're in those low light situations. So keep that in mind when you're out there filming. But we're walking back, and I'm a little bit behind him, and I'm just looking at him walking, the moon shining down, and kind of the tree line and everything right there. I'm like, why not? So as I'm walking, I just roll film at a low angle, looking up at him and everything. Not knowing if I'd be able to use the shot or anything. If you go and watch the My Obsession video today, that is the shot where we basically announced the series. Like, it ended up being a huge puzzle piece in that video. So, like Drew said earlier, roll on everything, because you never know what you're going to get. You might not even know you have something till you get in the editing room, and you're like, holy crap, this is freaking sweet. So, roll on everything, man. Everything.
Yeah, I know I had a similar story, going back to that staff hunt we had down in Texas a number of years ago. And Andy Meeks and I were sitting in the blind together, and just rolling B-roll footage of just some does out feeding on the feeder, and kind of hanging out making jokes about some cattle that were nearby. And all of a sudden, here comes this zebra walking by. And it was something that, had I not had the camera on and rolling, it happened so fast and was in and out of there that we never would have had footage of it. But it turned out amazing. It's one of my favorite things I've ever filmed.
So that shot, y'all's response was, that in general, because I was back at camp and you texted me right after that happened. That whole thing was one of my highlights from that trip, because y'all were we had no idea, nobody did, that there were exotics out there, so we were so freaking excited. All that is to say, one of the best, I think from your video, one of the best shots we've ever gotten is of Andy from that trip. He's looking at the camera, the most surprised look I've ever seen on his face, and in the corner of the frame, there's a half-eaten banana in his hand. And if you guys are watching the podcast video, I'm going to put that on the screen right now. That way you guys can see it. If you're just listening to audio, here a couple days after we put the audio track out, the video will be out and you can go see it. But that picture is one of my favorites, probably from any hunting trip that we've had. Just, again, like he said, hadn't had the camera rolling, wouldn't have got it. So
yeah, and that was a funny story to begin with. We had gotten in late the night before from a long day of driving in from Minnesota, and Andy had already gone to bed to rest up for the next day's hunt, and we were sitting there with the property owner, and he mentioned, hey man, there's these zebras that we have on this property. They're free range, but they're off limits. So if they come in, get some video of them and don't shoot them.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's a huge property. What, it was like 6,000 acres.
6,700 acres, yeah. What are the chances?
I figured the odds of them coming in that first morning wasn't very high, but got the surprise of the week.
Sure enough. Well, that trip too, man, like I know it's over 2 years ago now at this point, but that trip too, and we have some footage from that time frame on our YouTube of that hunt and everything, but that trip was a good example too of a bunch of different content creators coming together, and not to say any of us have the exact same style of filming or anything, but we had 10 guys in camp, a majority of which were filming, and we had a bunch of different guys and footage from a bunch of different cameras coming into the editing room on that. One guy did the edit, and it turned out great, the few videos that we put out from that hunt. So again, it's when you, and I'll speak a little bit to this because it is relevant to our fall obsession guys that are listening to this podcast. We have so many different guys in different places with different styles of filming, but bringing that all together to a common editing room, and for other content creators, whatever the circumstance might be, bringing different cameraman stuff to a common editing room, to a point you can turn that into a consistent vision and a consistent format as it rolls out with that common editing room. Some footage might have to get bounced, if it lacks the quality, because quality does play a big part. But if the quality is there, the production can be edited to match a creation style, So that, and again, I say that in this podcast. If it's useful to you as a creator, then great. But mainly for our own staff's benefit, is if the quality is there, 9 times out of 10 we can do something with it. One thing that I did want to touch on, too, it's come and gone out of my mind throughout our conversation today, but and this might be a little bit more relevant too to the photography side of things, because photography it's not something we've talked a lot about today, but it is something that's relevant to us as a media production company in the outdoor industry, is angles, because angles are everything, and I hate crappy angles. I do. I'm just putting it bluntly. I mean, it takes, and this is, again, I'm speaking from my own experience and what I have learned over time. It takes a very little, I feel like, amount of effort to change your angle, and it completely tells a different story through a photograph. And it's applicable to video too, but I'm mainly speaking in terms of photography right now. I know lower angles I'm a fan of personally. I feel like a lot of stuff comes out better at a lower angle. Sometimes not, but I'll use just somebody. You kill a big buck, you're taking a picture, or you have your buddy taking a picture of you with the big buck, you're taking a picture of him, whatever it might be. So many guys just stand upright, snap a photo, move on. We're going on to the next thing. When dropping down so that you are eye level with that animal can make a huge difference in how that photo is perceived. And I'm not trying to tell you that you're supposed to use angles that make the animal look gigantic or way bigger than it's supposed to be. I'm not trying to teach trick photography here, but those lower angles just, again, are more appealing to the eye. And when you're an online company, we're getting right into the gray area for me, but I don't want to make it sound like we're doing everything for the likes or for the follows or anything, but we're an online brand at the same time, and that's where we grow and everything. And so we look at it through the eyes of, we need that quality, we need those shots that pop and everything, and low angles help with that. And then just being creative helps with that too. Just stepping back, looking at a situation and thinking, okay, what are some angles that are different? Or what's something that I've seen somebody else in a photo? Can I do that? The answer is yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. Instead of just taking a quick snapshot, like I said, from a standing position and moving on, if you are trying to create your own outdoor content, pay attention to your angles, because it will make a huge difference. And other stuff that you can think outside the box, I can't speak for Android users, I can only speak for iPhone users, but with this phone, for example, again, talking about stuff that everybody has in their pocket, not a high-tech camera or anything. These newer iPhones, or at least the Pros, they have a wide angle setting on them for photos. I love it. Majority of our Texas Dirt series, which is filmed kind of in a vlog style, I feel like, for lack of a better term, is filmed on a wide angle. It turns out pretty good. And then one photo from that veteran hunt that I will put on the screen right now in the podcast video is a photo that is basically from above the hunter. It's from above Mark, where he's standing there sitting there on the ground with his deer. That photo is one of my favorite photos from the trip, and I did not take it with a drone or anything like that. I took it with a wide angle iPhone standing on my tiptoes on the ground. You don't see my boots, you don't see any of that. The angle was right, but it is literally looks like it's coming from straight above the guy. And again, thinking outside the box, thinking what can I do that's creative. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you take a photo and you delete it right away because you're like, nah, don't like it. But you got to try. That's how you find those unique shots that pop.
Yeah, and I'd even add to that, don't be afraid to take too many pictures.
Yeah.
Take pictures from all different angles, because really you only get one opportunity at it,
Mm-hmm.
or it's all processed up and you don't have that opportunity.
And on that note too, just because as we're working through it too, we talk about film and everything. Don't let the end of your hunt or the end of your recovery finish your journey, through your production, whether you're taking pictures or video, whatever it might be, because the story isn't over. Now, you might be trying to tell a specific part of that story. You might not have a need for stuff like that, but the journey's far from over. And like Drew said, don't be afraid to take too many, whether it's photos, videos, whatever it be. But you still got to get that thing back to camp. You still got to get that thing quartered out, processed up, packaged up if you do your own processing, in the freezer, all that kind of stuff. Hey, it's called a content opportunity is what that's called, start to finish. So don't and I'll might be a good spot to end, I don't know, unless we got something else, but don't let the work of the content intimidate you, because it is work. Because especially if you're doing it by yourself, self-filming is a whole nother ball game. We've been talking about everything today from a content creator standpoint. I don't think we have time to get into the self-filming side of everything today. That probably have to be an episode of itself. But if you're doing everything on your own, it's even harder. I mean, that's just a given. And it's a lot easier for you to fall into the hole of minimizing your production, of minimizing how much stuff you capture, how many minutes that film's rolling, or how many photos you take, whatever it be. And it's really easy that as soon as you walk up on that animal and get that final kill shot of you holding them upright, you're done. Signing off. I'm going to go to work now and get this thing cut up. Man, if that's what you got to do, it's what you got to do. But if you're really trying to be a content creator, you got to keep that thing rolling. And I'll raise my hand. I'm guilty of turning the camera off and being done at that point. This last year when I killed my deer, I also tried to keep it going a little bit. I got video of me trying to lift that thing in the truck all by myself. So, keeping that camera going can be a struggle sometimes if you're doing it on your own. But like I said, sometimes it makes the world of difference in what the end product is.
Yeah, and even for those people at home who aren't ever going to create anything to share on social media, but just want that really good trophy picture, I think taking a few extra minutes, right? Well, I guess my recommendations for those people who are looking for an extra ways to improve their trophy pictures, right? Take the extra time to put the deer or whatever your trophy is in a proper setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it means dragging it 20 yards to get it out of some thick brush so that you can see your surroundings, do that. If it involves turning and facing the sun rather than having the sun at your back, do that. Yeah. See,
I'm raising my hand. I did that.
Yeah, we've all done it. The other thing I'd recommend is take those pictures, those trophy pictures, before you field dress, right? The number of people that I've seen that take the time to field dress the animal and then decide to do the pictures as an afterthought. I mean, they're nice deer, it's nice, but you're never going to end up with a picture in the quality that you want if you wait until after you field dress.
Yeah.
One last tip: if you're looking to take blood off of fur, whitetail fur, elk fur, whatever it is, and you're nearby the truck and you've got access to a bottle of Windex will take that blood right off the fur and really help you clean up those pictures. So, the tricks of the trade that we use to help get better pictures.
Yeah, for sure. Man, and you're getting me all wound up about my pet peeves, but the background of photos, man. Oh my gosh. Some that I see on social media, it's like, really, man? You couldn't have taken that a few minutes earlier out in the woods instead of in your cluttered up garage or whatever it might be, you know? I mean, man, that it plays such a huge role. Even if you're not a content creator, if you're just listening to this podcast because, you know, and I mean, everybody takes a picture of deer they shoot, you know? Take it out in the woods, man. Don't wait till you get back to your garage or bed of your truck. Now, granted, I have seen some pretty cool photos. There is a creative aspect to taking a picture of a deer in the back of the truck, don't get me wrong, and you can be very creative with that. Yeah. But if you got a cooler and tools and tarps and a bunch of other crap back there that nobody wants to look at, it typically doesn't help the deer out any. So
yeah, no, and I mean, take all those pictures, right? Take the pictures in the bed of the truck, take the pictures in the garage of it hanging there. Take the picture. I mean, one of my favorite pictures of after the harvest is the full freezer with all the brats in it. You know, it's a fun picture to send all my friends, and
yeah,
it is what it is. But make sure you leave yourself something to go back and look at and really share with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we unpacked a lot, I feel like, and at the same time, I feel like we just scratched the surface on a lot of stuff. I know from a podcast standpoint or from a let's do a video over this standpoint, you know, sometimes it feels like there's only so much you can touch. I do feel like for the time we had today, we gave some good pointers and brought some good stuff out. As we already mentioned, the self-filming thing is a whole nother topic. I think that'd be a good one to maybe do a part 2 on some point with Nick in on that conversation too. And that way he can at least defend himself or speak up for himself when we're talking about him. So, but for now, we're probably going to call it a wrap on today. Again, if you guys are listening to this as a content creator, if you're wanting to get better at your own outdoor content, or like I said, maybe you're just listening because you're a loyal podcast listener, or just cause sound interesting, whatever it might be. Hope you guys got something out of this and are able to take something away for your own use or anything. Again, we're not trying to hide any of our secrets or anything, but I mean, a lot of what we learn is by trial and error over time. You know, you keep doing it long enough, you'll get better at it, whatever it might be. So, but we appreciate you guys tuning in to this week's Fall Obsession podcast. If you have not already, hit that follow and subscribe button on whatever podcast platform or app you're listening on. We are on all major podcast apps, as well as our website has all our episodes on it, fallobsession.com, and our YouTube channel. We're putting out, pretty much trying to put out a video now for every podcast episode we have, as well as just the audio recording on there. But all as I say, even virtually, like Drew and I are doing today, which is how most of our podcasts these days are recorded. We're putting out videos for you guys, so be sure that you tune in, subscribe, that way you get notified whenever we drop a new video. We're also putting out a bunch of other videos on our YouTube channel and stuff like that. So we talk about content creation, we talk about what we do here as a media production company. That YouTube channel is where you can see it all come to life. So be sure that you guys subscribe to that, check it out, start watching some videos. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, again, the YouTube, all of our socials, go follow Obsession. We post daily on there with a lot of different stuff as far as what we're doing, what our staff's doing. Again, we're content creators, so you guys are going to see the best of what we got coming in on those pages. We got staffers in a wide variety of states across the country that are contributing that content as well, revolving around a bunch of different subjects and stuff like that. So head on over to Fall Obsession. We have something for you wherever you hunt. That being said, our website, fallobsession.com, that's the hub. That's where you guys can go to find all the content, whether it's photos, video series, educational articles, wild game recipes, our apparel. We have it all on there. Also on our website, fallobsession.com/podcast is where you listen to the podcasts. We are coming up on episode 100 of our podcast. We're 8 episodes away now, and that podcast will consist of our entire administrative team getting together, all 4 of us for the first time, Drew and myself included, to get together and just kind of have a conversation, discuss some fall obsession stuff. And we're giving you guys the opportunity with that milestone episode to be a part of it by submitting your feedback. Submit a question, submit a topic suggestion, whatever it might be. Set it into us, and we will address it during that podcast. Again, episode 100. fallobsession.com/podcast is where you go to send that to us. Ridge Rock Hunt Company is our podcast partner for this episode. I'm rocking the hat. Derek and Lacey, we've enjoyed developing that relationship with them over the past couple years. They book hunts is what they do. If you guys are looking for a new experience, maybe out of state hunt, wherever it might be, whatever it might be, in North America, hit them up. Again, Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and they will find something that fits your budget and with a vetted outfitter that will get you squared away in a new experience for you. You won't regret it, I promise you. They're good people. Drew, did I miss anything, man?
No, I think we covered it pretty well today.
All right, good deal. Well, guys, appreciate y'all listening to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. And next week, we're going to be back with you guys for another Monday morning episode. We'll catch you then.